What's up, everyone? I'm James Bainey, and I'm here with Kyle Larson, and we are getting ready to do a spoiler-filled book discussion on Test of Courage. Stick around. All right, man, we are here. We have been pretty heavily ingrained with a lot of High Republic knowledge coming in here. Today is the day that this book dropped, and we got our chance to read it early, which is great. But also dropping today is a Light of the Jedi, which is more regular novel, whereas this one is a mid-grade. So a lot of content going, a lot of people with eyes on Light of the Jedi, but Test of Courage, good book, right? We're gonna get in here to our reviews, right, of this book before we get into any specific spoilers. So we will let you guys know when we get into the spoilers, but we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what happened in this book, but not specifically what happened. Right, because we got another video up that actually tells you specifically the plot. We don't do reviews. We don't put our opinion into that at all. We just wanted to tell you exactly what happened in the book. So if you want to go see that, go check that out on our channel. But then this book particularly is just to kind of sit back and have a spoiler-filled discussion, what we thought of the book, and kind of give our reviews and stuff like that. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about the High Republic Test of Courage, released January 5th, 2021, written by Justina Ireland and read by Kaylor Lay, as well as published by Del Rey and Random House Audio. And of course, the timeline is the High Republic era. Let's get started just on our ratings. What do you rate this? No spoilers, but what do you rate it? And did you like the book?
I love the book, and I gave it an 8 out of 10, I believe. And yeah, I loved it, and it was, no spoilers, but it is a very character-driven story, and I gave it that score based solely because I really loved all the characters in this book. And it really, I thought that the themes of, kind of friendship, of perseverance, of courage, and also ultimately of redemption as well, where, that's kind of the good stuff that I go to Star Wars for. So it was really pleasant to read. So I enjoyed it a lot. How about you? I didn't give it as good of a score as I did Light of the Jedi, not to compare it, but I give this one a 6.9. Like, it sits right below that 7 mark. And the reason I think I give it that score in particular is because, to me, it felt like, hey, if the original trilogy is Light of the Jedi, this is Mandalorian. Like, it's good, but it very little portions of this story really cross over with, let's call it, what's really happening. And throughout the process of reading this book, I couldn't help but feel like, does any of this matter? Now, you're absolutely right. I love the characters. I'm excited to see these characters return. They held more weight than I thought they would by the end of the book, because the majority of the book I kind of felt like, why do I care what's going on in this book? Why does it matter? But I think your point is correct, that it really is just a story about the characters and the kind of the events that they go through and how they handle those events. It's just kind of a timeless tale that you're just supposed to kind of enjoy for what it is. And I think, while that's good and fine, the reason it didn't sit with me perfectly is because it didn't feel like it totally connected. It felt like it was like, over there, this was happening, and then they just tried to like tie it into the beginning and the end to, what was really going on, which was like the great disaster and all this other galactic stuff that's happening. It almost felt like these characters just like totally missed out on the whole thing. They were on a deserted island. That's not to be said that it isn't a good book, like I said. So, I'm giving it a positive review by far. my positive starts at 5, so anything, you know, close to 7 is still a good book.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of my overall thoughts, is I kind of felt like just because it happens over here, it was kind of like a little like, what's the point? Even though I still kind of get the point, and I had an enjoyable time with it. Do you want to get into spoilers? Do you just kind of want to talk about
Sure.
our favorite parts of the book? Let's go with you. So go ahead and start this off. What was your favorite part of Test of Courage?
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think. I think so. I guess we're in spoiler territory, just to make sure again, right?
Yes, absolutely. Spoiler.
I really think kind of the last chapter where Imri has, you know, he's faced the dark side, he's come out the other side of it with the help of Vernestra, and they're both kind of realizing what they've been through. They're realizing that they've been through this really traumatic event, that they didn't, you know, they had time to process it while it was going on, but they didn't really, now that they've stepped on the other side of it, and, you know, and you know, there's been transformation in a way for, especially for Imri. The fact that then they come together and that they decide that they're going to be this new kind of, not, I don't know if family is the right word, but they see that they have this bond now. And Imri, you know, a Jedi Master was somebody who was really important to him. It was like his family, and that's who he lost at the beginning of the story. And then he finds that in Vernestra, and she also finds that in him. You know, she was really kind of, I wouldn't say unsure or uncertain, but she was, you know, it's her first assignment as the youngest Jedi Knight to ever live. She's a 16-year-old Jedi Knight who, you know, she had just passed the trials the year before. She was actually, I think Imri is the same. He's just like a year younger than her, so they're almost peers in a way. But she's, you know, she's gonna, you know, she takes him under her wing, you know, and she even says, I think, like, is this weird that I would be your master, or, you know, you would be my Padawan?
If it's not too weird.
If it's not too weird, she kind of clarifies that, and he's like, no, it's, you know, it's not weird at all. And for him to also too, like, you know, basically somebody who's like the same age, be like, have that humility to be like, okay, I can learn from them. This person is smarter than me, and this person also helped me kind of come out of the dark side too. So, I just liked, it's a really brief moment, but that really kind of summed up the book to me. And I think that's when I was like, wow, I really loved these characters and loved the story. And that's why I scored it as high as I did. So how about you? What was your favorite?
Similar, not the exact moment, but kind of the same idea here. But oddly, very opposite. My favorite moment of this book was thinking the whole time that all these characters are goody two-shoes. Like, nothing was ever going to happen that was actually a real issue or a real moral complication, that they ultimately were just going to have to fight off the bad guys, or they were going to, or a big bear was going to show up and they were going to have to fight off the big bear, you know, or whatever.
Right.
And to at one point recognize that it wasn't just like, because it's the loss and all the other stuff that Imri was going through, but they also brought in this really cool, unique thing of like how he was feeding off of somebody who was handling it even worse than he was. And that dark deception was leading him to go down this path when it wasn't. So it was like partially his problem that he has to deal with and he has to, account for, but also a little bit like out of his control, like the darkness just kind of took over. And when I was in the chapter near the end, where I'm like, he's not backing down. He's literally going to fight her. He's going full dark side, at least in this moment. I was like, this is not the direction I thought this book was going to go. I thought they were going to beat the pirates and get off the planet, and that was just going to be it. Because it felt very mid-grade young reader for a lot of the book. Especially since it focused so much, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but it focused a lot on what you would expect a preteen or a teenager to get out of a book, which is like, maybe my parents are going through a divorce and like, how do I feel about that and dealing with those feelings and stuff. A lot of that stuff doesn't always resonate with an adult. But what was cool was when they went into stuff where it's like the dealing with something really tragic that happened proved to be more like you turn into a bad person. Like, it's not just like, man, it really sucks for a while. It's like, no, this can affect you to a point where you're going to make bad decisions and you're going to think you're handling it the right way, and you're not. You're absolutely not, and you're legitimately turning into a villain, a bad person. And so I was like, okay, so this book actually went somewhere with it. That was my favorite part. Not to mention, it's just cool in action. Like, she busts out the whip and she breaks his lightsaber in half, and she's like, no, like, you're done. This fight is over.
Yeah.
So she really steps up and owns him. So that was my favorite part. Let's get into it a little bit. So you said you liked the characters and stuff. Did you like the story? Did you feel it all similar to what I was saying? Like, where is this going? What's the point? Why am I following these people?
Yeah, that was the thing, is like, I had a really hard time writing a review because when it came down to it, not a lot happens in the story. I mean, character wise, a lot happens with these people, but I I can kind of see, like, there were times too where I felt like, oh, that's it. Like, this just happened. And, cause it moves. And that's the thing, is like, everything happens very fast. It's a really quick story, like, you're on the ship explodes, you're on the planet.
Yes.
They face the bad guys, and then you're off the planet.
You could sum it up in exactly that, 4 sentences.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when you read Light of the Jedi, you can't, if you said 4 sentences about that book, you left like 80% of the book out.
It's a page, Yeah.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about it, though, is like, even though not a lot's happening, you're in the characters' heads, and it really is this, I thought it was a really clever character device that Justina Ireland put it for Imri, that he's so affected by the emotions of other people. As you're talking about your favorite part, how that chapter where he's feeling honesty, the kid who's the ambassador's son who lost his father in the beginning of the book, he's feeling that pain.
Weird
he's feeling
name.
that grief.
Couldn't get over
Weird
that
name.
in the book. I kept reading.
I know.
Honestly, I wanted to say that, and I was like, oh, it's not honestly, it's honesty. And I'm like,
honesty.
Never got over it.
It's like, are we at the beginning of a new sentence, or
Yes, yeah.
But the way that he felt that trauma and felt that pain, and then you're going into other people's heads too, like Avon Staros, who is, she comes off in the beginning as this like kind of wacky kid who gets into trouble, and she's really abrupt. She's kind of socially awkward. She's been sent out into the galaxy to get some culture, essentially. But she also thinks that at the same time it's because her mom doesn't want her. And you find out too that she was kidnapped as a child and like held for ransom and stuff. And you find out all these like different layers of the characters too. It's so that's where, it really, it's like, the story is actually, the characters' reflections. So yeah, I felt, the actual plot, there's not much to it, but like, when you're getting inside these characters, there's kind of the story right there.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel too. So, like I said, I kind of explained it a little bit with Imri, for instance, but Avon is another one of those characters that, like, for a large majority of the book, she's like, I don't think my mom likes me, and then you're like, I'm sure that's not the case,
Right.
But it was a little bit more interesting when they finally did get into that they kind of explain a little bit more, that like there was this kind of traumatic event that she went through, and it was for the first time where I think in this book it was the first time that it felt like maybe we were starting to go down the route of like, this particular theme is a little more adult, a little more age appropriate for my group or my age region for reading this book, because it wasn't just simply like, I don't get along with them. Well, you got to start to find a way to be positive about, these things or something. There actually was like legitimately this tragic thing that I would imagine that if most people went through, like you were kidnapped, and then your grandfather went after the people, and then when he came back, he's like, oh, I killed them. And like you're like, you have to think about your parental figures or the people who are taking care of you actually had to go to the extent of like murdering people in order to keep you safe. It's pretty traumatic and usually does not happen in like someone like me or you's life, you know? So I felt like the story at times was very surfacey and boohoo, like I'm a teenager, even though there was this big tragedy at the beginning of the book where these people really did die, and like his father was dead, and yet for some reason it still wasn't really being delivered. I think honesty, I'm gonna be honest here.
Yeah, be honest.
I think he's probably the weakest character because I don't know, like he was the one, like I get that Emery also lost his father figure, but in a way Jedi are sort of trained for that. They're rehearsed all the time, like don't have these connections with people and stuff. So I almost kind of felt like I was like, okay, he'll be fine, he'll get over it, right? But honesty, to me, I felt like he should have been really, really a pain to deal with until like the end of the book. But he wasn't. He was mostly just very silent the whole book. And maybe that was to try to connect with maybe how kids really do deal with death or anything like that, like a big thing in their life. I'm not really sure how that stuff is actually handled in real life. Maybe children are more like that. But to me, I was like, he's barely even in the book. Like he's really only there to I don't know, feed into Emery or whatever. Whereas he's really like a more prominent character in this story. And honesty never really felt like he was much of a thing. I don't know. What do you think? Who was what? I don't want to say who do you think was the worst character, but maybe what I'm going off of here.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying about like honesty. I mean, I like them all, but like, yeah, if I had to pick one that I was, the least intrigued by, it was definitely honesty. Where the book ends, I'm kind of curious to see like what if he ends up getting recruited by the Nihil, because not to say that kids that lose their parents like lose a moral compass, but if that's something that the Nihil used to manipulate him, into like, oh, if your dad wouldn't have been on the Republic cruiser, he wouldn't be dead, So I'm kind of curious to see, because he was definitely poised for a leadership role on that planet. They talked about that. So perhaps that's why he's there. But also too, I do know, I have seen kids that have lost their parents, and I have seen kids that are like, terribly grief stricken from day one. And then also kids where you wouldn't even know it. Like, they're just kind of going about their own way. So, I think that silence was kind of her way of implying like that was his, he's really burying it deep down. It's hard for him to talk about. So.
Which I really like what you mentioned. We're in spoilers, so this book does at the end kind of point to how they're going to start recruiting now from his specific region, his system of planets and stuff. And, I had kind of considered, I think maybe like somewhere in my mind that like maybe they would recruit him, but you saying it actually really sticks out. And I think that could be kind of and I don't know how many people here watch The Hunger Games, were interested in The Hunger Games, but like, the PETA thing where like, did you see it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's been quite a while, but I know the gist of it. Yeah.
But at one point, one of the main characters, who's a good character, like shows up on the opposite side of like everything against like what you would think he would believe in. You know what I mean? So like, why would Honesty, this character, whose father was killed by these people, why would he join their side? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
But I feel like there could be something really cool in that story later, talking about how he was manipulated into it. And maybe the next chapter of this book will be a little bit more, maybe it's a junior reader, or maybe it's even an adult novel. We don't know. But, the next chapter in that character's life could be really cool, because he could be manipulated by these people and have to redeem himself, kind of like you thought maybe Emery was going to go to the dark side. but it's actually honesty. Nobody was paying attention to him, and he really turned out to be evil and give in to all that anger and hate. Could be neat, but we are still talking about this book, and this book on some levels, that's why I gave it just below 7. It's just like, there's stuff there. It's just that it is in fact a mid grade reader or whatever. And it's kind of surfacey, and not a lot happens in the book. But I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about this? Are you excited for future chapters? Do you think you'll keep up with? Okay.
That was the big thing, is by the end of the book, I was ready. I'm like, I want more. I want to see these characters grow up. You know, I was watching, I'd never really watched Naruto, the Japanese, anime cartoon, and my son introduced it to me recently. But he told me how, like, you know, there's so many different series of that. Like, you know, those characters that you meet in the first season end up growing up and having kids, and then there's series about their kids and stuff. And like, that's kind of what I was thinking about with Test of Courage, is like, okay, we're meeting these characters and they're gonna be pivotal. You know, like Avon Staros, I think she's gonna be a huge character at some point in this. And I don't know about honesty. Like, that was totally, you know, that's totally speculation. But I think, like, you know, they're setting these characters up for a reason, and they will play a bigger role in the story. But we're just kind of meeting them here, and maybe this is their watershed moment. Maybe this, like, you know, because they're implying that there's a lot of transformation in this short amount of time for these characters. You know, because like at the end of the book, Honesty is like, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the Senate and I'm going to tell them what the Nile did to my family and what they did to my people and that kind of thing, to make sure everybody knows what they are and stuff. And like, you know, maybe this is a really he's going to be getting involved in public service now, and like, you know, and that's the thing. And then you know, Imri's like set off, and Avon picks up Imri's lightsaber at the end, and she really kind of like stuffs it into her bag, and she's really fascinated with like Jedi technology. So maybe she's like gonna, I don't know, become some good inventor for good or bad, you know, too. So
she has a very strong Aphra vibe, which, I mean, she's supposed to kind of also be Sana Staros.
Yeah.
Because they're related, but
yep.
I still get that sort of explorer, archaeological kind of vibe from her more than anything else. Although maybe a little bit more science pushed, whereas Aphra's a little more historical rather than scientific. But regardless, I think we're looking forward to the characters, and like I said, I think I think the biggest thing that could come out of this is perhaps to have that story be the story that set everything up, but then see some of these characters come back in like a more I don't know what they're referred to as, like a higher grade novel, if you will.
YA, I think maybe it would be
YA, or even just like a regular novel. Like it would be interesting to have some of these characters in like the more mature adult novel, but then like have Vernestra show up with, you know, her Padawan, and they're treating her a certain way or whatever. You know what I mean? I just kind of take it out of the kid community just because she's young, and bring her into this situation where it's like, oh wow, she is just, there's a reason she's a knight. You know, forget her age. She's powerful. She's headstrong. She knows her stuff. They don't just say like, oh, you're very athletic, so therefore you can become a Jedi. She has a mental capability that is beyond her age, and that's very unique for what she is. So if she is just, forget her age for a second, and she's compatible with and understand things and can make the same decisions as all the other Jedi Knight, then put her in a normal novel and just kind of overlook her age for a little bit and let her be one that are making these big decisions that impact the galaxy. That would be really cool. And then you're really putting a lot of emphasis on how in this particular time she's young, but that's not the point. It's her maturity level that, you know. So I think out of everybody, even though I said Imri was like the the coolest thing. I think the character that intrigues me the most, obviously, is Vernestra here, the title character, I think, if you will. I don't know. And then maybe we'll get her in a video game or something someday, and we'll get to use that light whip. That'd be sweet.
Totally. Well, that was one thing I was going to say is, well, you know, they announced that Justine Ireland YA book today. I can't remember what it was called, like Out of the Shadows, I think. And Vernestra is going to be a prominent character in that. But I think it's also really interesting that they note somewhere, I think in the beginning of the book, that she modified her lightsaber because she felt the Force compel her to. And she took it from a design that hadn't been used since the Sith Wars. And the only people that use these whips are Night Sisters. So it's going to be like, it's really, I mean, I feel like, yeah, like there is, like we're meeting her right now for a reason, and there's going to be a bigger story that she's a part of. Like she and Avon to me are the ones that like I'm really going to keep an eye on those two. And I also loved the way that they were both written as well, but I totally agree with you as like, you know, it would be great to see them in an environment where it's like a novel that's a bit more mature in tone, and they can spend a little bit more time getting into the nuance of the characters as well, and put them in a even more dire situation where they have to work with other people too. So it's it's a great introduction to some really promising characters, I think.
Yeah, not to mention a great introduction into what I think the era of High Republic novels and storytelling and all the stuff that they're doing could be. Whereas like, hey, we're releasing 2 books at the same time. One of these stories is super important to the main story that's happening in the galaxy at the time. And another one is an ancillary story that is technically happening at the same time. But it isn't really about all the stuff that's going on, all the important stuff. It isn't. The High Republic, I don't think, is going to be this era that is you have to read all of it. It's going to be like, we're going to have milestone books or like tentpole books that matter, and they're probably the ones that like you could read, you know, these 6 and that will be the High Republic for you. And if any of these characters seemed interesting, yet take a look at all these other just off the beaten path stories that involve a lot of those characters, but maybe aren't so important to the ongoing story or the big importance. And that's where I think they're doing the kind of Marvel thing where it's like, you get the whole thing if you collect them all, but at the end of the day, you really only need to see Avengers and Age of Ultron, just like the main ones. But there are these other stories that are all happening at the same time, and they're all part of the same thing, and that's really cool. And I think that's kind of where Star Wars excels too, is that they're able to tell stories all over the place, and this is just all encapsulated into one era. So
the fact that they're keeping it contained is like this, because the last few years of canon, you know, it's been like there's novels, you know, coming out all the time that take place in different eras. But there's movies and TV shows that are coming out that have nothing to do with those. But you're like, oh, okay, well, I should read this because it's canon and it might tie in. And you're like, well, you know, Dark Disciple has nothing to do with, you know, The Force Awakens, like that kind of, when, you know, even though they kind of came out around the same time.
Yeah. Or like Jedi Fallen Order. Like if you like that story, who knows when you're going to get anything related to it again.
Exactly.
Like we know they're probably going to do another one, but it's like, how many years till then? And then like barely any stories connect. It's like kind of small stuff. At least this in this case is like, yeah, you're jumping around all over the place. You've got a lot of material that you can look forward to that's going to connect a lot of these characters. And so it's kind of a frenzy at this point of how much content you're going to be getting out of the High Republic. So, but I think that's probably it. That's about all we can say on Test of Courage. If you guys wanted to give your thoughts on it, we will respond on the YouTube channel. Just leave us a comment. Make sure you give the video a like and subscribe if you want. That would be great. You can find other videos on the channel, including Resistance broadcast stuff where I'm there with John and Lacey, and we're talking about regular Star Wars content, news, and stuff like that, speculation a little, but also book discussions. We've had we've done these for a lot of other books, and we started the new What Happened In stuff. So if you didn't read some of these other books, you know, you can always go back and see if we did a What Happened In X book and see if it would be interesting to you if you actually picked it up. But you can get the story spoiler filled from there, as well as this one, right? Test of Courage. It's also available on the channel. All right, that is it. I am James Baney. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MyerTrunks. Kyle, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm Kyle D. Larson. So come find me, and I'd love to talk about the High Republic with you. So I'm out there.
All right. Yep. All right, guys. Until next time, until the next book comes along, we will see you later.
All right. Thanks, everyone.